As a reminder to everybody, we're here with Dr. Darrel W, author of the book, The God Virus, How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture. We're going to start taking calls now because we've already got callers on the line who had questions for Dr. W. And we'll just go ahead and get started and see how it goes. We've got Leo in Wales.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks very much for the show because it's quite inspiring in many ways. Yeah, for Dr. Darrel, you're talking about this metaphor of religion or God being a virus. In your research or your book, have you come up with anything to suggest what the metaphoric antidote is, or how we should deal with this kind of virus?
Well, I get this question almost every time I speak about the God virus, is how do you treat it? Well, first of all, you don't treat it by telling people they're stupid for believing in whatever God virus they have. And that's one of my pet peeves, that we as non-theists, I'm assuming you're a non-theist. If you're not, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. If I were to define myself, I've seen Matt define themselves as well a few times. There's atheists, and I think I would put myself under the anti-theist category.
Answer to your question, though, how do you treat it? First of all, I don't think it's my duty on the face of this earth to treat other people for their God virus. And if I take it upon myself to try and convert everybody, I'm really not behaving any different than the religionists are behaving. They try to convert me to their particular religion. I'm not trying to convert them to atheism. I'm trying to keep them out of my life and out of my politics. That I try to do. I try to raise my kids or whatever people I'm involved with to let them know where I stand, but it's not my job to convert the rest of the world. And I think when we get on our kick about we're here to convert you to think like we think, we're really not doing much different than the religionists are doing to us.
But if their belief is actively harming our world,
right,
isn't there a point where we can actually stop and say, well, actually, no, we have a right to stand up and say what you believe should not follow the laws and legislations and moral conducts and behaviors. We should not tolerate it in our society. We should not allow you to impose those beliefs on us.
I entirely agree, and I'm the first one out there to protest. And by the way, I'll be speaking to the Irish Atheist Convention in July, and they've got the new blasphemy laws, so I'd appreciate any donations to my bail fund if I could. But I agree. We need to be out there protecting our rights and asserting our rights. I have a bit of a concern, though, when we interact with people we're close to, like our brothers and sisters and friends and relatives. Is it our job to convert them, and how do we interact with them? And I actually spend several chapters towards the end of the book talking about, well, how do you interact with these people? And one of the lessons I try to convey in the book is that logic is not the answer. You cannot argue somebody out of their religion. So stop doing it. It just creates more discontent in the relationship. The focus should be, as we interact with people we love and care about, the focus should be more on how do I influence that person rather than how do I convert that person. Because in fact, they're trying to convert you. They want you to become a Christian or Episcopalian or a Pentecostal. I don't care if they convert to me. What I do care is they stay out of my business. Don't tell me who I can sleep with, when I can have sex, what I can eat, what is taught in my schools. I think people should not be imposing their religious viewpoint on me, and I'm very assertive about that. So I distinguish between the political, social world. Are we going to teach our kids that the world's 6,000 years old? That I'm concerned about, just like you are. But I'm also concerned about how do I relate to my family, my friends, my neighbors? How do I influence them rather than convert them? And that makes sense.
And sometimes there's nothing you can really do to control how the other people will respond. There is a distinction to be drawn between proselytizing, on the one hand, trying to convert someone openly, and the simple act of free and open discussion, criticism, debate, having a show like we have where you talk about the subject of religion, you talk about atheism, you offer alternatives to religion, people call, you argue with them over the phone.
But that's different than dealing with friends, relatives, and loved ones, and how we interact with those folks, and coworkers, and that sort of thing. That's the two realms I try to talk about in the book. I don't think there's a solution to this problem, Leo, but I think there's a way to approach it, and that's what I try to talk about.
And now, jumping in real quick, because this is an area where I'm not sure exactly how much in agreement you and I are on this. I think we're mostly in agreement in that I don't go around knocking door to door. People call us and we have the conversation here. But my take on it is I'm always a bit bothered when people say that that logic and reason is the wrong approach, or is an approach we shouldn't use. I agree that you're not going to reason somebody out of something that more than likely they didn't use reason to believe in the first place. And yet I'm a living example of somebody who, because of logical arguments and reason and evidence and an increased understanding, gave up their beliefs. And because of doing the show and having these conversations, I hear all the time from people. There was an email just the other day of a guy that said, up until 3 months ago, I was a fundamentalist Christian, and it's because of things that I saw on your show or read from Dawkins, et cetera. Right. So I've always been an advocate of the kind of many-pronged approach to this, that you need somebody like me who is going to be as in your face as you're possibly going to be. But with people calling me, I don't make outgoing calls. It's not like I'm knocking door to door saying, "Hey, you still believe in Jesus? I can fix that." But you also need. Sorry, what's that?
No, I said I completely agree and accept your approach. I think you've probably found the right balance of it.
Yeah.
The thing is that I completely agree with Darrel with respect to family members and things. And I've been accused of being a hypocrite about this before. It's not that I don't care about my family members. I've had discussions with them, and we have come to an agreement that they know what my position is, and to some degree they understand my reasons. If they understood it entirely, I think they wouldn't be religious anymore.
That's true.
But and I understand what their position is, and we have kind of come to this agreement that for the sake of keeping the peace in the family, we're just not going to address these issues, and I'm fine with that. And I'm not in the position where I would ever. If somebody calls the show and reaches a point where they don't want to talk about this anymore because they're uncomfortable, that's fine. And you're all entitled to believe whatever nonsense you want. Where we definitely agree is that you need to keep your beliefs out of what the rest of us are allowed to do with regard to politics and law and things like that.
And I think what you bring up right there is when some of our phone calls with theists get to the point where they are uncomfortable with continuing the call, I think that is the moment where a little good has probably been done, because right there, that person is going to think about this call. And ultimately, the way to cure the God virus, if you want to know about treatment of it, each individual person, you've got to do your own work here. You have to do your own heavy lifting in the end in order to get where you need to be. And all we can do as unbelievers and as skeptics, rationalists, people who are very interested in what the truth actually is, and I think that is a distinguishing characteristic of atheists, is that we need to be the people who care passionately about what really is and is not true. Regardless of whether a certain belief makes you feel good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To have a worldview that conforms to observable reality, I think is usually the best way to go about it. You've said that many times. When you get into a discussion with a theist, and we do this on our phone calls many times, you'll hear sometimes these little pauses in their answers. And that's them thinking about this stuff. They may stick with it. They may not, they may rationalize their way out of it. They may, go back to their preacher and get some canned responses from the Answers in Genesis website or whatever. But the point is, you mentioned this earlier with the whole, it sounds like, you'll talk to a Christian and they'll get to a certain point where they say, "Oh, well, that's not me. Don't think that I'm like them," because that's how what the fundamental, they're realizing that something you're bringing up is a problem for their belief system and their worldview. And they're responding to it nervously in that way because they know it's a problem. And so even if it seems like, well, they waffle, they backstep, they shift the goalposts, at least they're aware of something and they're thinking about it. And that's all you can do is plant that kernel, and then they have to do the rest of the work. They may never do the rest of the work, or they may.
The content of this video is produced by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. If you enjoyed this content and are willing and able to provide a donation, please visit the website below.